The views and opinions on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of ESPN Tucson 1490 AM, 94.9 HD Channel 4, or the Arizona Lotus Corporation.
Welcome to Spears and Ali on ESPN Tucson.
Justin Spears, I like that.
With Justin Spears and Ali Farhang on 1490 AM, 94.9 HD Channel 4, ESPN Tucson. Brought to you by Tucson Federal Credit Union, the Volpe team at Nova Home Loans, and Rightway Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing.
I want to be entertaining, but I'm not stupid enough to compare myself to Ali.
Ooh, so excited. So excited. We got a top 15 matchup tonight. Arizona versus BYU in Provo, Utah. And here to break it all down for us is our guy, Mitch Harper from KSL Sports. Does a great job covering the BYU Cougars up there in Provo. Mitch, we appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. I think it's fair to say that this might be the biggest home game of the season for the BYU Cougars.
Oh, no question. You know, BYU's on a 13-game home win streak at the Marriott Center. The last loss was to the Arizona Wildcats. Only two teams have taken down BYU in the Marriott Center since Kevin Young took over, and one of those teams is Arizona. So a massive game for BYU. And, you know, I remember last year, I've been covering BYU basketball since 2014, and I haven't heard or seen that big of a road contingent before in my time covering BYU at the Marriott Center. Those U of A chants at the end of last year were loud. I expect tonight to be an electric atmosphere once again.
Mitch, we know about A.J. DeMatza. We're going to talk about him. We know about Richie Saunders. We know about Robert Wright. Those are the big three for BYU. One of the advantages Arizona's had over their opponents this year is they go about 8-9 deep, and you kind of see other teams wearing out. I don't notice BYU subbing a lot, and it seems like their starting five play a huge amount of minutes. Tell me about BYU's bench, and is that a concern for the Cougars that Arizona could wear them down as the game progresses?
It's definitely a concern. And, you know, BYU, their bench, I think, is getting a little bit better, particularly in the front court. That because of the mid-year addition of G League, former G League player Abdullah Bidu Ahmed. He's the backup five to Keba Keita, and he's given some quality minutes. I thought he had his best game over the weekend against Utah, where he had 6 points and was more of a factor on the offensive end for BYU. And then they've got an intriguing player in Hadim Boop, number 7. He's began the year playing the 5, but traditionally his position coming from the NBA Academy was the 4. And Kevin Young feels like they can play him. He can guard anyone 1 to 5 for the opposing team. And in the Utah game and even the Texas Tech game a week ago, you saw Boop, a 6'10" big, guarding the guards. Whether it's Texas Tech with Christian Anderson, Utah's Terrence Brown. So he's an intriguing personnel piece. He's not going to give BYU much offensively, but he's kind of relentless too on the glass. He's kind of been compared to like a Kenneth Faried type, you know, Kevin Young with his NBA comparisons, his extensive background in the NBA. That's kind of the energy that Boop brings. So those are the two guys that are really interesting off the bench. Outside of that, though, there's not much BYU says they can rely on every single night. They've got some intriguing individual talents, but, I mean, they're more than midway through the season. They're going to rely on the big three, but those two big guys in the front court are the ones to maybe keep an eye on in the depth in the second unit for BYU.
Well, Ali mentioned him, and he's certainly the most talked about guy with this BYU team, and that's A.J. DeMatza, who is maybe the first overall pick in this upcoming year's NBA draft. And, you know, he's a really talented player. What kind of player is he? Like, Arizona fans who have not really watched A.J. DeMatza, I mean, he just scored 43 points the other day. Is he a do-everything guy? Is he more of a post player? Is he got a perimeter game? Like, what's your assessment of a player like A.J. DeMatza and the number of things that he can do?
Elite in the mid-range. You'll find him picking his spots. His bread and butter spot is that Big 12 logo in the paint. He will try to get there over and over again. That's where he likes to feast and get a lot of his points. If you got a hot chart, that's where a lot of activity is going to be for A.J. DeMatza. He does an excellent job, too, of getting to the foul line. You know, I for BYU history, he's probably the best at getting to the foul line since Jimmer Fredette. I mean, he can single-handedly get 15 free throw attempts by himself in a game. One of the losses that BYU had this year to Texas Tech just about, a week and a half ago, he only had one free throw attempt, and it ended up being a season low in points. 3-point shooting is a little bit mixed bag. Even he acknowledged before the Utah game, he was not consistent and not consistently knocking down the shots, but 80% from three against Utah, and had a season high 4 threes in that game. So maybe a little bit of momentum there where he's feeling confident coming into this one in shooting the three, but he's going to get to the rim, and in the mid-range game, that's where he feels he's at his best. And I think what's been impressive about AJ, at least from BYU's side of things, because they've never been used to getting talents like this. Programs like Arizona, they've had their long list of elite 5-star talents that have been brought into the program. For BYU, this is one of one, and Kevin Young's trying to make it more the norm. Last year they had Yegor Dioman. This year they've AJ DeBonsa. But I think what's been impressive is that he's just kind of felt like a BYU guy in a way, which is crazy because, as you noted, Justin, he could be the future number 1 pick, and that doesn't scream BYU guy at all. But he's really been good in the locker room. He is the leader of this team, him and Richie Saunders. He's an excellent passer, too. And one of the knocks on BYU, I think, this year, from my vantage point, is that they're not consistent enough shooting the three. Because AJ, when you got a guy like him and Rob Wright at the point guard spot, you've got to have some snipers around those guys, because they will find the open guy. They'll make tough passes and get you the rock in a sweet spot to go fire that thing off in half a second. But they haven't consistently knocked down the three. That's something to watch. But AJ has been better than advertised for BYU, and there was off the charts expectations for him. He's been as good as they get, and coming off a 43-point performance on Saturday. Curious to see his follow-up tonight in Big Monday.
Mitch, everybody's looking forward to the A.J. DeBonsa Koa Pete matchup tonight, and for good reason. So am I. But I'm also really interested in the Robert Wright versus Jaden Bradley matchup. Yeah. And Robert Wright's been a good point guard. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot, averaging 18 points a game, I think around 5.5 assists a game. What do you expect tonight with the seasoned Jaden Bradley and a kid that's playing good at the point for BYU and Robert Wright?
Robert Wright's been really good for BYU, and it speaks to BYU's talent at the top end of the roster that he might be their third best player. And I think, though, in Big 12 play, he's probably been their second best. I think Richie Saunders had a little bit more up and down performances, but Rob Wright's been outstanding, and he's got an ability where in the paint, he has a great ability to finish, and he will go into heavy traffic and, take on big defenders and kind of be fearless in that sense. And to go up against Arizona's size and their front court, that's going to be interesting to see how he fares getting to the paint there. But that is going to be a good matchup. I think, these are the two best offenses in the Big 12 during conference play this year in terms of scoring offense. I expect this to be a high-powered offensive game with both of these point guards leading the way. But Rob Wright, I think with the underrated piece to him this season has been his three-point shooting. At Baylor, he didn't show that much in Waco a season ago. But this year, he's been about a 40% three-point shooter for BYU. And if he really finds his rhythm from beyond the arc, that'll be a good sign for BYU. And I know Arizona, it's not their bread and butter this year to just have a high volume of threes. I know they had a big number against West Virginia on Saturday, but BYU's got to hit the three at a nice clip, and they hit 42% against Utah. But before that, there was a stretch of about 23% from three. So Rob Wright, he's one of the consistent guys from beyond the arc. He's got to hit the three at a high clip of this one, and so that will be something to watch. But how he goes up against Bradley, like I said, a veteran, a senior, one of the veteran best guards in the Big 12. This is a great matchup. I mean, I think this is one of the best matchups in college basketball this season. And I think that matchup alone highlights the quality of the talent that's going to be on display tonight here in Provo.
Over under number of cougar tails you consume in a year. Let's say 4.5.
Yeah, I will go. Yeah, it's over. It's over.
I'm way over.
It's at least 5. I'm going at least 5. I mean, because they'll sometimes roll out the specialty ones. They'll have some blueberry one or some vanilla one. So it's like, yeah, I'm throwing down the $7 to get that specialty cougar tail.
You know, one thing is I just noticed when we started this interview is first time we were seeing each other because you're streaming in, is that you and Justin could be brothers because you look so much like his older brother, Josh.
Yeah.
And when you say over under 4.5 Cougar tails, we're talking about 40.5 for Justin. If he was covering BYU basketball, I'd be really worried about. He'd be taking diabetes drugs.
One a week, man. One Cougar tail a week keeps the doctor away. All right, that is our guy Mitch Harper from KSL Sports. Does a great job covering the BYU Cougars. Make sure you follow Mitch tonight for all the coverage in Provo, Utah, which should be a very fun game between Arizona and BYU. Mitch, always appreciate your time and insight. See you later on, my friend.
Spears and Ali, see you next month in Tucson. Take care, guys.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good, Mitch.
See you, man. All right, coming up next, we got Chancellor Johnson from ESPN and also the Big 12 joining the show to talk about tonight's game.
Josh is covering BYU basketball? You just call him Mitch? That's his alter ego?
Yeah. Stay tuned. Tonight, it's going down in Provo, Utah. We've got a top 15 matchup between the BYU Cougars and the top-ranked Arizona Wildcats. Arizona still 20-0. Great start to their season. Let's see if they can keep it up tonight against the BYU Cougars. And here to talk about that game and also talk of other Big 12 basketball things is our good friend Chancellor Johnson from the Big 12 and also ESPN. Chancellor, good seeing you as always. Thank you for your time and insight. And, I think it's fair to say that tonight might be one of the biggest games in the Big 12.
Easily. I mean, not just, obviously tonight, but throughout the entire season. And the thing is, it's funny because everybody is focusing on Saturday's matchup, and understandably so, right? You have two potentially number one overall picks in AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson going at it at Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday. But for some reason, college basketball fans and just fans of the game of basketball are missing out on the number one team in the country, undefeated on the season, having an opportunity to go to Provo and take on BYU. It should be a special matchup, of course, because BYU is also one of the toughest places to play. Arizona has been a wagon all season long. You have two great freshmen at Arizona in Koa Pete and Braden Burries. And then you have the freshman in AJ DeBonsa, plus a great overall group for both teams combined. So it should be a special atmosphere and a special game overall. I can't wait to tonight. I would not be surprised if today's game is actually much more competitive and more interesting overall than Saturday's game between Kansas and BYU.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if Peterson will play, right? I mean, he's been kind of in and out all year. But focusing on this game, I'm looking at one stat, right? And Arizona all year has been monsters on the glass. I mean, just out-rebounding everybody by 20 rebounds for the most part. And more rebounds gets you more shots. And I think that's a philosophy Tommy Lloyd's going with respect to we don't need to take a lot of threes because we get to, more shots up. BYU's led by Keba Keita and AJ DeBonsa in the rebounding category. The stat I'm looking at is rebounds. Who's going to out-rebound who? Is there another stat you're looking at to kind of determine how this game's going to play out?
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point because Arizona, in a way, has a math problem. They shoot the least amount of threes in the entire conference at about 6 a game, but they make up for it on the boards. And we've seen throughout, whenever you can dominate on the boards, that is a recipe for success. And, it just gives you an advantage just overall, of course, when you're able to dominate the glass that they have been able to. But it will be a tough challenge going against, a BYU team that can rebound the ball, at a high level as well. As you mentioned, Keita and DeBonsa rebounded very well. And it's going to be a physical game. We've seen Mo Krivas and even Braden Burries, a guy who we talk about his perimeter scoring, but what he brings on the glass as a guard is very valuable as well. And so to me, it'll be a big key on who's able to dominate the glass, but also we'll see if Arizona can repeat with some of their three-point shooting that they had in their last game at home. Can that carry over on the road this time around? I think they'll need to be able to hit a couple of jump shots, particularly from deep, in order to be able to ride this wave as they go on the road against BYU.
That's a good point about Braden Burries' rebounding.
Yeah,
one of his most
really
underrated
good.
traits.
Yeah, absolutely.
In his game. AJ DeBonsa is, a player that gets talked about a lot, and rightfully so, maybe the number one overall pick of the draft. In your opinion, what makes him that dude of all players?
To me, I look at his length and his just overall skill set. He definitely moves different from other young freshmen, across the country. And to me, the funny thing is when I watch his game, he has kind of a little bit of an old school feel, and he'll catch it in the post, and especially if he gets a mismatch. And he takes 2 feet in the paint, the drop step into the paint, and just rises over guys and is just able to knock it down at a high level. And you really just don't see that see guys at 18, 19 years old be able to find spots. And I think that's so intriguing to me, and things that can carry over at the next level is he loves himself a turnaround jumper in the paint. And that's because most guys who are guarding him, he doesn't even see them because he's just so long, so tall, and so athletic, he's able to shoot over them. And then you combine that with his athletic ability. When he gets downhill, he is coming down the lane with bad intentions. And the other thing as well is he's very unselfish. When you think about a guy who is as talented as he is, he really lets his other teammates shine as well. When you look at their point guard and Rob Wright III, he's averaging almost 18 points a game. Before AJ DeBossa got to BYU, it's been a Richie Saunders team, as I know many Wildcats fans know very well about him and the production he's had over his collegiate career. But he's been able to come in and still allow those other guys to eat. And that's why BYU, even outside of AJ DeBossa, has, to me, the best trio in all college basketball between Richie Saunders, Rob Wright, and AJ DeBossa.
You're talking about AJ DeBossa, you could have been talking about Koa Pete, because it's very similar as far as the selflessness, the way his mid-range game. I'm looking for the unsung hero of this game. Arizona all season has always been a different guy. I mean, the main guys are the main guys, and they're doing what they're doing. But it could be Tobe Awaka coming off the bench. It could be Anthony Del Orso. It could be Ivan Karchenkov. BYU gets his production basically from three dudes. Is there an unsung hero from BYU or an unsung hero from Arizona that maybe you're like, hey, this guy could turn the game one way or another?
You brought up a good point that I feel like not a lot of people have talked about just in general as a key to success for Arizona, and that's Del Orso. If you look at his last few games, he hasn't made a field goal up until the last one where he was able to come up and have 12 points. And so if you can get that type of production from him, that goes a long way. But for me, when I look at this Arizona Wildcats team going on the road and trying to win at the Marriott Center, I'm looking at Jaden Bradley, the senior, the guy who you guys trust the most and one of my favorite players to watch in all of college basketball. I've said it before. He reminds me of a lot of a guy that I covered for years here in Houston, and that would be Jamal Shedd, and his ability just to win, right? He's such a great talent, such a great leader. And then down the stretch, Braden Burries, great talent. Koa Pete, great talent. But when it gets to a tight ball game, which I expect it to be, down the stretch, on the road in a hostile environment, I want the ball in Jaden Bradley's hands, because we've seen it not just throughout his career, but even this year, his ability to do it on the road in tough environments. We saw it in the first game of the season against Florida. Look at what he did there. You look at what he was able to do against UConn on the road as well. And I expect we're going to need a solid performance, which I know Jaden Bradley can bring and certainly do tonight against BYU.
I don't know if you know this, Ali, but Chancellor is a Sun Devil.
Yeah.
Former Sun Devil.
I don't sound like it today, do I? I'm a fair man. Arizona's been very fun to watch this year, and I'm just a fan of the game. And so now that I cover the Big 12 as a whole, I have no problem giving Arizona its flowers. And I've said it, though. This is the year, man. I look at what the Wildcats have been able to do this year and the talent on their team, the different ways they're able to win. It's coming from a Sun Devil. I think the Wildcats can go to Indianapolis for sure.
Well, I will say
true journalist right there, man.
Your knowledge of Arizona and the Big 12 and the fact that you have an extremely cool name overshadows where you graduated college from.
and look, and be careful now. I'm still Arizona Sun Devil at heart. Be careful.
What I was going to ask you, because you've been working now for the Big 12 2 years, 1 year. How long have you been with the Big 12?
I started over the summer, so officially we're going on 6-7 months now.
Yeah. Okay. And the fact that you've been in Houston for a little bit, so you've kind of already been in Big 12 country before this gig. But man, just what has it been like experiencing the Big 12? Considering when I was going to the U of A, you were going to ASU, we were in Pac-12 country. I think both schools being in the Big 12, I think it's a really good thing, especially from a basketball standpoint.
Definitely. It's certainly been unique. And one of the cooler things is just to see the different types of fan bases. And, I think what makes the Big 12 so interesting is there aren't a ton of teams that are alike. Obviously, when you were you look back when, Arizona State were in the Pac-12, you had, all the kind of West Coast teams, right? But now, UCF is nothing like, Manhattan, Kansas, or Houston is nothing like Arizona State. And you have so many programs that have these unique traditions. Everybody is extremely passionate. And then football had a really great year. You look at what Arizona was able to accomplish. They had a good season. Arizona State the year before and being able to come in right away to the Big 12. I wasn't gonna hop on a show with you guys and not show my Sun Devils any love because I can't really do it in basketball this year. But football wise, last year being able to win the Big 12 and go to the playoffs, and then you look at Houston going to the Final Four. There's been so many different teams, and you look at basketball specifically. This is the best conference by far in college basketball. And Brett Yormark has said it, but he thinks it's the second best basketball league in all the world, right behind the NBA. And you look at how many teams I think can win the Final Four. Of course, it starts with Arizona. You got Houston, who certainly can make a run again. BYU has enough talent. I look at Texas Tech, who beat Houston this year. Those are at least 4 teams that can get to the Final Four. I hope I'm not missing anybody else. Kansas as well. When Darren Peterson is healthy, they can beat anybody in the country. And their team is starting to round out. So it's been a fun year covering the Big 12, not just for basketball, but for football as well. And I'm excited to continue to do it throughout for the rest of the season.
Don't sleep on Iowa State and Chancellor.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't sleep on them, man, just because they lost a couple. They're awesome. And let all your friends and neighbors know at that school you graduated from that we started a GoFundMe for your basketball coach to continue coaching there. It's at $1.4 million right now.
Relax.
So we have plenty of funds for you to keep your coach where he is because we love him.
Just a delight.
No
Just a delight. That is our guy, Chancellor Johnson from the Big 12, also ESPN. Can't wait for tonight's game between the Arizona Wildcats and the BYU Cougars. One of the biggest games, one of the best games of the year in the Big 12. Chancellor, we appreciate your time and insight. Thank you for hopping on with us today.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Thank you.